The boardroom on the 41st floor of Hartwell Capital went quiet the moment Victoria Hartwell's heels crossed the threshold. Not the polite quiet of a meeting beginning, the held breath kind. The kind that happened when everyone in the room knew something was about to go wrong for someone, and they were all privately grateful it wasn't going to be them. Victoria stood at the head of the table, 43 years old, third-generation founder's granddaughter turned self-made CEO, wearing a charcoal blazer that cost more than most people's monthly rent and an expression that gave away nothing. The Vancouver skyline filled the window behind her, gray November light pressing flat against the glass, the North Shore Mountains hidden somewhere behind the clouds. "Where are we on the Kelowna distribution contract?" she asked. Across the table, her director of operations, a careful man named Gordon, opened his mouth. Then the boardroom door opened. Everyone turned. A man stepped inside, and Victoria could tell immediately, the way you can always tell, that he'd made a mistake coming in late. He was wearing work trousers, a fleece vest with the Hartwell Building Services logo embroidered on the chest, and steel-toed boots that were clean but worn at the toes. He was holding a clipboard and breathing like he'd taken the stairs. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't realize the room was close the door." Victoria's voice was the kind of cold that didn't require volume. He pulled the door shut behind him. The click landed in the silence like a stone in still water. "Building services?" Victoria said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Luca Ferraro. I was asked to check the HVAC panel on the north wall. There was a maintenance ticket filed last week, and I was told you were told to be here at 9:15. It's 9:40. Luca's jaw tightened slightly. "I know. I apologize. There was a situation I had to. I don't accept situations." Victoria took 3 steps toward him. In her heels, she was nearly his height. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, Miss Hartwell." "Then you understand that when I schedule a maintenance window, I schedule it for a reason. 25 minutes of delay affects the flow of this entire building. It sends a message to every person in this room that some people operate under different rules than others." She let that land, and I won't have it. Luca met her eyes. There was something in them she didn't have a name for. Not fear, not defiance. Something older than both of those things. "I understand," he said. "Good. Then you also understand that this is not a situation I can overlook. HR will process your final pay. You can collect it Friday." Nobody moved. Somewhere down the hall a phone rang, muffled through the walls. Luca nodded once. He set his clipboard on the corner of the sideboard, reached into his vest pocket and placed his keycard and a small ring of master keys beside it. His hands were steady. "Thank you for the opportunity," he said. He walked to the door, opened it, and left. The click of it closing was barely audible. Victoria turned back to face her executive team, 22 people, all of them looking at their laptops or their hands or the middle distance, none of them willing to be the one to speak first. "The Kelowna contract," she said. "Gordon." Gordon started talking. Victoria listened, but in the corner of her awareness, something sat uneasily, the steadiness of Luca's hands. The way he hadn't argued, hadn't pleaded, hadn't done any of the things people usually did when their livelihood was pulled out from under them in front of an audience. She pushed it down and focused on the numbers. Luca Ferraro took the elevator to the lobby, crossed the marble floor without looking at anyone, and pushed through the glass doors into the November air. It was the kind of cold that came off Burrard Inlet and got inside your coat no matter how well you'd zipped it. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing. His phone buzzed. He already knew who it was. "Dad, I got the permission slip signed. Mrs. Okafor said you can drop it off tomorrow." He typed back. "Good girl. I'll be home by 4. Can we have soup tonight?" "We can have soup. You're the best dad in the whole world." "That's a very low bar, Rosie. D-A-D." He put the phone away and started walking toward the SkyTrain station, 6 blocks east through the gray morning, hands in his pockets, thinking about the rent that was due in 11 days and the 2 freelance maintenance calls he had lined up for next week, and whether either of them would stretch far enough to cover the gap. He'd taken the job at Hartwell Capital 8 months ago because it had dental benefits and predictable hours, and Rosie needed both a dentist and a father who was home before dark. He'd done good work. He knew he'd done good work. Gordon had told him so twice, and Gordon didn't say things he didn't mean. But this morning, Rosie's school had called at 8:47. A man had been seen lingering near the primary school entrance for 3 consecutive days, and this morning he'd approached 2 children on their way in, offering to help carry their backpacks. Rosie had been one of them. She'd said no and gone straight to the office, which was exactly what Luca had spent 2 years teaching her to do, but he'd still needed to go. He'd spoken to the principal, filed a report with the attending officer, held Rosie's hand until she stopped shaking, waited until she was settled back in class with her teacher staying close. By the time he'd made it across town to Hartwell, he was 25 minutes late. He hadn't explained. He'd started to, and Victoria Hartwell had cut him off, and something in him had calculated, the way he sometimes did, that the explanation wasn't going to matter, that she'd already decided. He rode the SkyTrain home in the middle car, watching Burnaby slide past the windows, and thought about what Grace used to say when things went sideways. You can't fix what happened. You can only decide what comes next. He'd been deciding what came next for 2 years now, since the accident, since everything that followed. He'd gotten pretty good at it. He unlocked the apartment on the 3rd floor of a building in East Vancouver with a view of the alley and framed drawings on every surface. Rosie's artwork, dinosaurs and horses, and one very ambitious attempt at a skyline that she insisted was accurate. He put the kettle on, sat down at the kitchen table with his laptop, and started looking for work. Victoria Hartwell's afternoon was scheduled to the minute. Lunch at her desk, 2 investor calls, a legal review, and a board prep session that ran until 6:15. By the time she was back in her office, with the lights of the city coming on below, she had 17 emails she hadn't read and a headache that had been building since noon. Her assistant, Priya, appeared at the door. "Your ex-husband called. Tell him to contact the lawyers." "I did." He said, "It's about Lily." Victoria's hand stilled on the keyboard. He didn't say what, just that you should call him directly. "Fine. Anything else?" "Ben Okafor wants 5 minutes, tomorrow." He said it was about this morning. Victoria set down her pen. "Send him in." Ben was her CFO, a steady and honest man who had been with Hartwell Capital for 11 years and had never once told her what she wanted to hear when the truth was something different. He came in, sat down without being asked, and looked at her the way he sometimes did when he was choosing his words carefully. "I'm not here to relitigate a personnel decision," he said. "Good. Because it's not up for discussion. I know." He paused. "Do you know why he was late?" "I don't need to know why. Punctuality is a baseline expectation. Without it, Victoria." He said her name plainly, without heat. "I'm asking if you know, not whether it matters." She looked at him. "His daughter's school called him this morning," Ben said. "There was a man approaching children at the entrance. Apparently it's been happening for several days. Luca Ferraro went to the school, made sure his daughter was safe, filed a report with the police, and then came directly to us. He was 25 minutes late." Something shifted in Victoria's chest. She kept her face still. "He could have told me that. You cut him off before he finished the sentence." She didn't answer. Ben stood up. "I'm not saying you were wrong to hold the standard. I'm saying you might want to know the full picture before you feel confident you were right." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Gordon says he's the best person we've had in building services in 4 years. Never a complaint. Work quality exceptional. 2 minor lates in 8 months, both mornings, both to do with his daughter." He left. Victoria sat very still in her expensive chair and looked at the city. Her phone rang. Her ex-husband's name on the screen, she answered. "What's wrong?" "Lily's at St. Paul's." His voice had no performance in it, which was how she knew it was serious. "There was an incident after school. She's okay, but you need to come." Victoria was already standing up, already reaching for her coat. "What kind of incident?" "A man tried to grab her in the parkade. One of the other parents screamed. Some people intervened. She got away. She's shaken up, but physically she's okay." "Victoria, she's asking for you." Victoria was already in the hallway. The drive to St. Paul's Hospital took 14 minutes and felt like it lasted the length of her entire life so far. She sat in the back of the car with her hands pressed together in her lap, thinking about Lily's face at breakfast that morning, thinking about the word grab, thinking about all the words she'd said to Luca Ferraro in that boardroom and how much smaller they seemed now. The emergency entrance was bright and loud. Her ex-husband, Thomas, was waiting in the corridor outside the family waiting area, and whatever was left between them that wasn't entirely cold dissolved the moment she saw how pale he looked. "Where is she?" "Doctor's with her." 2 minutes. He put his hand briefly on her arm. "She's okay. She's talking. She was scared, but she's okay." A constable introduced herself as Officer Chen. She walked Victoria through what had happened. A man in a blue jacket had approached Lily in the parkade adjacent to her after-school program, told her he knew her mother, said her mother had sent him because she was running late. Lily had said no and tried to walk away. He'd grabbed her arm. Several people nearby had intervened. A woman walking to her car, a delivery driver, and a third person who'd been on foot nearby when he heard Lily scream. "Who was the third person?" Thomas asked. Officer Chen looked at her notepad. "A man named Luca Ferraro. He was the one who physically intervened when the suspect refused to release your daughter. He restrained him long enough for others to call police. The suspect fled on foot when additional people arrived." She paused. "Mr. Ferraro sustained some injuries in the process. He's being seen in another room." The name arrived in Victoria's chest like a stone dropped into deep water. Thomas was saying something. She heard it distantly. Victoria. He touched her arm again. You know him? He worked for my company. She stopped. He worked for me until this morning. Thomas stared at her. She didn't say anything more because there was nothing to say, or there was too much, and she didn't know which. She just followed Officer Chen to Lily's room and pushed open the door and crossed the floor in 4 steps and held her daughter so tightly that Lily made a small surprised sound and hugged her back with both arms. Mom, I'm here. I've got you. I'm okay. I'm okay, Mom. Victoria pressed her face into Lily's hair and didn't say anything for a long time. When she finally pulled back, she looked her daughter over the way you do when you have to see for yourself, checking every visible inch of her. 8 years old, blonde hair coming loose from a braid, a small bandage on her wrist, eyes red-rimmed but steady. Tell me what happened. Lily told her. The man in the blue jacket, the lie about her mother, the way she'd said no and tried to leave, the grab, and then, Lily said, a man came running. He was really fast. He yelled at the bad man to stop, and when he didn't, he pulled him off me, and it was scary. She swallowed, but then the bad man ran away, and the good man stayed with me. He sat on the ground next to me and talked to me until the ambulance came. What did he talk about? Lily almost smiled. He told me knock-knock jokes, really bad ones. She considered this. He said his daughter always groans when he tells them, but secretly she thinks they're hilarious. Something in Victoria cracked open very quietly. He asked if I was okay like every 2 minutes, Lily continued. He said I was brave. He said screaming was exactly the right thing to do. She looked at her mother. He had a bruise on his face. Was he hurt? I think so. Yes. Is he okay? I'm going to find out. Luca was sitting on the edge of an examination bed in room 7, fully dressed, boots back on, jacket folded over one arm, waiting for the discharge paperwork. That was taking longer than he'd like because Rosie was home with Mrs. Chen from downstairs, and he'd told her he'd be back by 8. The door opened. Victoria Hartwell stood in the doorway in the same blazer she'd worn this morning, but something about her was different. The precision was still there, but underneath it, something had come loose. How's your daughter? He said. She's all right, because of you. He nodded once, looked away. Mr. Ferraro. She stepped inside. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. This morning I was wrong. Luca looked at her. I was late. You were late because your daughter's school was dealing with a threat, and you went to make sure she was safe, and then you still showed up for work. He didn't say anything. I didn't ask, Victoria said. I cut you off. I made a decision in front of an audience because I thought that was what leadership looked like, and I didn't once consider that I didn't have the full picture. She paused. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Luca was quiet for a moment. The nurse came in, handed him a sheet of discharge instructions, said something about ice and rest and coming back if the ribs got worse. He thanked her. She left. How bad are the ribs? Victoria asked. 2 cracked. It's not the first time. You shouldn't be trying to get home alone. I've got the SkyTrain. Let me drive you. He looked at her steadily. Mrs. Hartwell. I understand what you're trying to do. You feel responsible. You want to fix it. But I don't need to be driven home, and I don't need the apology to come with a price tag. Your daughter is okay. That's enough. That's not why I'm asking. Then why? She didn't have an immediate answer. He watched her think, watched her try on several responses and discard them. Because it's the right thing to do, she said finally. And I've been doing the wrong thing too consistently for it to be a coincidence anymore. He looked at her for a long moment. Okay, he said. But I need to be home by 8. They didn't speak in the elevator. They didn't speak crossing the lobby or getting into the car. Her driver, an older man named Paul, didn't ask questions. Luca gave the address in East Vancouver and sat back and watched the city move past the window. You have a daughter, Victoria said eventually. Rosie. She's 7. Is she with someone? Neighbor from downstairs? She's good with her. And her mother? Luca looked at the lights on the Canby Bridge. Car accident. 2 years ago, February. I'm sorry. I know, they were quiet again. Paul took the turn onto Main Street heading east. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure, this morning. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't push back. You just accepted it. You'd already decided. How did you know that? Because I've been in enough rooms to know what decided looks like. He shifted slightly, wincing at the ribs. Some people want to hear the reason. Some people have already made up their mind, and anything you say after that just becomes an excuse. I wasn't going to beg in front of 22 people for a job that was already gone. That's not weakness, Victoria said quietly. What you did. I know it's not. I thought it was this morning. I thought the fact that you didn't fight back meant, I don't know what I thought it meant, that I had no leverage. Maybe most people don't. The car turned onto his street. The building came into view, exterior lights on, one of the upper windows glowing. Rosie was probably still awake, technically, and Mrs. Chen was probably pretending not to notice. "Come back," Victoria said. "I want to offer you your position back. Better than your position. We have an opening in facilities management that I should have posted 6 months ago. That's not why you helped my daughter. No, it isn't. So don't confuse those two things." She looked at him sharply, and something in her expression shifted, not offended, but recalibrated. Like she was hearing something at a frequency she hadn't tuned to before. "You're right," she said. "I am confusing them." The car stopped. Luca reached for the door. Luca. She used his first name without seeming to notice she'd done it. "I don't want this to just be a debt I can't pay. I want to actually make it right." He turned back, looked at her in the low light of the car. She looked tired and real, and much more uncertain than she'd seemed at 9:40 this morning. "Then be honest with yourself about why you do the things you do," he said. "That's where it starts. Not here." He opened the door. "Thank you for the ride." He walked into the building. She watched him go. 3 floors up, Rosie's was waiting in the hallway in her pajamas, and when Luca came through the door, she ran at him so fast he barely had time to brace. He caught her anyway, held her close, pressed his face into the top of her head. "Dad, your face, I know. You look terrible. Thank you. What happened?" He set her down and crouched to her level. "I helped someone who needed it. A little girl." Rosie studied his face with enormous seriousness. "Is she okay?" "She's okay. Good." She reached up and touched the bruise above his eye very gently with 2 fingers. "You should put frozen peas on it. Mrs. Chen already made me." "Good." She took his hand and walked with him toward the kitchen. "We saved you soup." They sat at the small table under the ceiling light that Luca had rewired himself 6 months ago, eating soup from a pot on the stove. Rosie talked about her day, about the permission slip, about how her friend Marcus had brought a snake to school in his backpack, and there had been significant consequences. Luca listened and ate and let the ordinary weight of the evening settle around him. This was the part that mattered. This, right here. The next morning, Victoria walked into Blake Industries. She stopped herself, into Hartwell Capital, and called an all-hands meeting for 10 o'clock. Not the executive team. Everyone. All 160 employees in the Toronto office. She stood at the front of the main floor without slides or notes. "Yesterday morning," she said, "I fired a man named Luca Ferraro for being 25 minutes late to a maintenance window. I did it in front of my entire leadership team to make a point about accountability. What I didn't know was that he'd spent that morning at his daughter's school, making sure she was safe after a predator was reported approaching children at the entrance. He didn't get a chance to tell me. I cut him off." The room was very still. That same evening, that same man stopped an attempted abduction of my daughter. He put himself between a stranger and my 8-year-old child, and he got hurt doing it. He then sat with her on the ground and told her knock-knock jokes until the ambulance arrived, because that's the kind of person he is. She paused. "He turned down my apology. He turned down my offer to give him his job back. He told me that what he did for Lily and what I did to him were 2 separate things, and shouldn't be confused. He was right." She looked around the room. "I have been running this company the way I was taught to run it, which is to say hard and fast, and without much room for the things I couldn't quantify. I have treated accountability as a performance rather than a practice. I have confused control with leadership. And somewhere in there I lost sight of the fact that the people in this building are not resources. They're people." She stopped. "I'm going to do better. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I know it starts with saying it out loud, in front of everyone, without a carefully managed communication strategy. So, that's what I'm doing." No one applauded. A few people nodded. A woman near the back was wiping her eyes. Ben Okafor was standing along the wall with his arms crossed, watching her. He gave her a small, quiet nod. She nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't redemption, but it was a place to start. 2 weeks passed. The man in the blue jacket, later identified as a repeat offender with a prior in Alberta, was arrested outside a grocery store in Coquitlam on a Wednesday afternoon. Officer Chen called both Victoria and Luca separately. Victoria donated to the school's new safety initiative without making a production of it. Luca agreed to speak with the principal's advisory board about security protocols because it was something he knew how to do and because it mattered. It turned out that cracked ribs and a reputation for staying calm under pressure were, between the two of them, a reasonable set of credentials. A property management company in Burnaby hired him within the week, better pay, flexible hours, and a site manager who seemed genuinely interested in his background. Rosie wrote a letter to Lily. She didn't tell Luca she was doing it. He found the sealed envelope on the kitchen counter one evening with a note that said, "Can you mail this? It's for the girl you helped." He sat down and read the return address she'd carefully written on the back. Their address? their names, and felt something move through his chest that he didn't immediately have a word for. He mailed it. 3 days later, a letter came back. Lily's handwriting was careful and round, with small stars drawn in the corners. She thanked Rosa for writing. She said her dad had told her that Luca was very brave, and she hoped he felt better. She said she'd never had a pen pal before, and asked if Rosie liked horses because she did. Rosie screamed with excitement for approximately 45 seconds, and then sat down to write back immediately. The letters went back and forth every week or so. Horse drawings, recommendations for books, a brief and passionate debate about whether hot chocolate with marshmallows was better than hot chocolate without. Rosie's position, marshmallows, obviously. Lily's position, they got in the way. Rosie's rebuttal, nothing gets in the way of marshmallows. Victoria found out about the letters from Lily, not from Luca, and she sat for a long time with that knowledge, understanding what it meant. That two children had built something simple and solid while the adults were still sorting out all their complicated feelings about what had happened. She texted Luca. Lily says they've been corresponding for 3 weeks. A pause. Thank you for letting that happen. His response came an hour later. Rosie ambushed me. I didn't have much say in it. She sounds like a force of nature. She really is. Victoria stared at her phone, then typed, "Is there anything you need? Not from guilt. Just asking." A longer pause this time. There's a school safety meeting at Rosie's school next Thursday. They want someone who knows what to look for in terms of perimeter vulnerabilities. Principal asked if I had any contacts who might be willing to come speak. You have a security team. I'll send 2 of them. That's it. That's all I need. She put the phone down and thought about what Ben had said weeks ago now about the difference between fairness and justice. She was still working out what justice looked like in practice. It was slower and less satisfying than she'd expected, and it required sitting with things she'd rather resolve quickly. She was learning to sit with them. At Hartwell Capital, something had shifted since the all-hands meeting. Not dramatically, not all at once, but measurably. People came to her with actual problems now, not the polished-down versions they thought she wanted to see. A junior analyst told her directly that a process she'd approved 6 months ago was creating bottlenecks, and could she look at it? She looked at it. He was right. She changed the process and said so openly in the team meeting. It was small, but Smalls was where it started. In January, on a gray Thursday that smelled like rain about to become snow, Victoria was reviewing a lease agreement in her office when Priya knocked to say she had a visitor without an appointment. She almost said tomorrow. Something made her say send him in. Luca Ferraro walked through her office door looking different than the last time she'd seen him, less worn down somehow, more settled. The bruises were long gone. He was wearing a jacket that wasn't fleece with a company logo on it. He sat down when she offered and looked around her office with the frank, uncalculating assessment of someone who spends a lot of time evaluating spaces. Nice view, he said. Does it look different from this side? Yes. He met her eyes. I used to check the exterior drainage on that window frame once a month. There was a slow leak in the seal. I didn't know that. Most people don't know anything about what holds their building together. She looked at him. Is that a metaphor? It's a maintenance observation. The metaphor is optional. She almost smiled. How's the new job? Good. Genuinely good. Better hours, better pay. The site manager actually listens when I tell him something's wrong. I'm glad. So am I. He paused. I came because I wanted to tell you something. I've been angry for 2 years, since Grace died. Not always at anyone in particular, but it was there, underneath everything. The day you fired me, I decided you were another thing that happened to me, another door that closed. And for a while after, when everything with Lily happened, I was still angry at all of it. Victoria listened. But I've been thinking about what you did in that all-hands meeting, what Priya told me you said. He looked at her steadily. That took something. It wasn't for me, it was for your company, but it was also honest. And I've been holding on to the anger because it felt safer than letting it go. He stopped. I'm not good at letting things go. Neither am I, I've noticed. A beat. I think maybe we're not that different in that way. She felt something shift in the room, subtle and not uncomfortable. I don't know what that means, she said honestly. Neither do I. He stood up. But Rosie asked if Lily could come over sometime to our place. And I said I'd think about it. And I have. What did you decide? That I'm done making decisions out of fear. He picked up his jacket from the arm of the chair. Saturday, if that works. Nothing complicated, just the girls, and maybe their parents. Victoria nodded slowly. Saturday works. Saturday in East Vancouver was cold and bright, the kind of day where the sky was so clear it looked like a different climate than the rest of the week. Victoria drove herself, which she almost never did, and Lily rode in the passenger seat, looking out the window at the neighborhood going by. It's different here, Lily said. Different from what? From our street. Yes, is that bad? Victoria glanced at her daughter. No, different isn't bad. Lily considered this with the gravity she brought to most things. Rosie said she can see the alley from her bedroom window, and in the summer the raccoons come and she gives them names. That's very Vancouver. She names them after planets. She's on her third Saturn. Victoria parked in front of the building. They climbed the stairs to the third floor. Luca answered the door in jeans and a navy sweater, holding a dish towel, and somewhere behind him came the sound of something clattering and Rosie's voice saying, it's fine, I caught it. Come in, he said. Ignore whatever that was. The apartment was small and lived in, bookshelves that were genuinely being used, a kitchen table with homework on one end and a jigsaw puzzle taking over the other, Rosie's drawings everywhere. A photograph of a woman with curly hair and a wide smile sitting on a beach, holding up a piece of driftwood like a trophy. Lily and Rosie appeared to have been corresponding for weeks, but still erupted into immediate chaos upon meeting in person, which seemed right. They disappeared into Rosie's room within 4 minutes, and the noise that followed was too complicated and overlapping to track. Luca handed Victoria a mug of tea without asking. She took it. They sat at the kitchen table, the puzzle between them, and talked about ordinary things. The raccoons, the drainage issue on the 41st floor, Rosie's position on marshmallows, Lily's horse drawings, the school safety meeting that had gone better than expected. They didn't talk about the boardroom or the parkade or anything that had required either of them to be brave or broken or wrong. After a while, Luca said, she's doing well, Rosie. Better than I expected. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. Sometimes. He turned his mug in his hands. Grace used to say that kids aren't resilient because nothing hurts them. They're resilient because they're still close enough to the beginning to believe things can start over. He paused. I'm trying to believe that too. From the other room, unmistakably, came the sound of a blanket fort being constructed. Load-bearing objects were being relocated. The structural integrity of the project was open to some debate. Victoria looked at the photograph on the shelf. She looks like she would have been formidable, she said. She was, he smiled just slightly. She would have told you exactly what she thought of you within 5 minutes of meeting you. What do you think she would have thought? He considered it seriously. That you're someone who's worth the work. Once you stop hiding behind all the armor. He met her eyes. I think that's still true. Victoria held the tea with both hands. Outside, a November afternoon was turning toward evening, the light going golden over the rooftops and fire escapes of East Vancouver. I don't entirely know how to do this, she said. Whatever this is, neither do I. Grace died and I forgot how to let people in for a while. He looked at the puzzle on the table. But Rosie wouldn't let me stay that way. She needs me to be a whole person, not just a wall she lives behind. He set down the mug. I think you've got someone who needs the same thing from you. From the other room, Dad, we need more blankets. He stood up. 1 second. He went. Victoria sat in the quiet kitchen with her tea and the fading light and the photograph of Grace grinning at the camera with the driftwood held up like she'd discovered something excellent. People who are worth the work. She thought about that for a while. Spring came to Vancouver the way it always did, impatiently, and all at once the cherry blossoms showing up in late February like they'd been waiting since October and had finally lost patience. Rosie declared them her favorite thing about Canada. Lily, who had been to Vancouver precisely twice in her life and was visiting for the second time on spring break, agreed with enormous enthusiasm. They walked through Queen Elizabeth Park on a Saturday morning that smelled like rain and new grass, the four of them. Luca and Victoria, Rosie and Lily, who were by now in consistent weekly correspondence and had expanded their blanket fort construction operation to 2 residences across the city. Thomas had sent Lily with enthusiastic approval and the instruction to eat something other than just croissants for breakfast this time. Rosie ran ahead, pointing things out. A robin, a dog in a sweater, 2 squirrels engaged in what appeared to be a significant disagreement. She talks like a documentary narrator, Victoria said. She listens to a lot of nature podcasts, Luca said. It's who she is. They walked a little way behind the girls, not quite together and not quite not. I told the board last week that I'm restructuring how we handle HR escalations, Victoria said. Cases that go to termination have to come through me with full documentation first. Not for small stuff, but for anything public. How'd they take it? Ben looked relieved. The rest of them looked uncertain. I told them uncertainty was fine. Certainty without information was the thing we were trying to avoid. That sounds like someone who's been thinking about it. 3 months of thinking about it. He glanced at her sideways. You know you can't undo that morning. I know. You're not going to be able to apologize your way out of the fact that it happened. I know that, too. Then what are you doing? With all the restructuring. She watched Rosie crouch down to examine something on the path, Lily leaning in beside her with equal intensity, making sure the next person who comes in with an explanation doesn't get cut off before they finish the sentence. Luca was quiet for a moment. "That's it," he said. "That's the whole thing." They walked a little further. The path curved around toward the rose garden, bare-stemmed still in March, but with a suggestion of what was coming. Rosie looked back to make sure they were following and waved imperiously for them to hurry up. Victoria waved back. "She's going to be exhausting when she's a teenager," she said. "Completely," Luca agreed with unmistakable pride. Lily grabbed Rosie's hand and pulled her toward something. A fountain, it turned out, shut off for the season but still photogenic, and the two of them began an elaborate game whose rules were only visible to them. Luca and Victoria stood at the edge of the path in the pale March sun, and it was ordinary, quietly and genuinely ordinary, in the way that only things you've worked for tend to feel. "Thank you," Victoria said. He looked at her. "For what?" "For not letting me make it easy, any of it." She paused. "For making me sit with it instead of buying my way out." He was quiet for a moment. Then, Grace used to say that the people who are hardest to forgive are usually the ones teaching you the most important things. That's wise. She was annoyingly wise. He smiled. "I'm still catching up." Rosie called from the fountain, something about the structural possibilities of the surrounding planters, and Luca called back that she was not to climb anything, and she called back that she was just looking, and he said that was exactly what people said right before they climbed something. Victoria laughed, just once, surprised out of her. He glanced at her, and something in his expression settled, not into warmth exactly, but toward it the way a season turns. They went to collect their daughters from whatever they were engineering by the fountain. The park hummed around them, ordinary and ongoing, and somewhere in the space between where they'd started and where they stood now, something that had been broken had become, if not exactly fixed, then at least useful in a new way. That was enough. For now it was enough.